We have recently been using arrays, which again are lists of information. For this program, I'm going to draw on something that we did in an earlier program in order to show how a two-dimensional array works. We have only been using one-dimensional arrays so far. So in a previous program, we had a list of athletes. And the list of athletes array had, say position 0, 0. It had a whole bunch of them. And let's say position 4, we had stored at that location maybe an athlete whose jersey number was 4. So we have Uwe Krupp at number 4. And then at say 23, we had we could have LeBron, not LeBron Lames, LeBron James. But the limitation to our array was that we were only able to store one string piece of data at each of those addresses. So if I wanted to, say, add the name Michael Jordan, there was actually no way to include an extra piece of data in slot 23. So what we're going to do with a two-dimensional array is we are going to make, instead of a list of strings, we are going to make a list of different lists of strings. So the way it's going to work is 0, we won't store anything at that. So what this is going to do is we'll have like position 0 to position 9. I'll leave space for 9 different athletes in here. And this one will be, everything will be null. So everything in this one will be null. Here, Uwe Krupp is going to get stored at position 0. And then, of course, this one is still going to go to position 9. It's a lot easier to create it where like they all have the same length. And then for this one, LeBron James will be in position 0. Michael Jordan will be in position 1. And of course, then we're going to have a bunch of blank spaces all the way to position 9. So quite often we're going to want to, store information in different ways. And a list of lists, which is what we're going to create here, is going to be a very powerful way to display and actually work with a whole bunch of data. So what I've got already included here is I've got my scanner included. I've got 2 scanner objects because I'm just matching the format from before. We want to input a number, which is the jersey number of the athlete. And then we want to input text, which is going to be the name of the athlete. And then we've got their 2 closes here at the bottom. Okay, so how do we create this? So we know that what we want to store here is string data. These are all going to be pieces of text, so it's all string data. So you have to still, just like a regular one-dimensional array, mention what kind of information you're going to store. So we're going to have a string there. Now, what we need is we know it's an array, so we need to put the square brackets here indicating that it's an array. But the thing here is it's an array of arrays. So in order to do that, we have to put a second square bracket box. If you get really complicated, and we're not going to do things to this level, if you do a 3-dimensional array, you could make a list of lists that are each individually lists of lists, and put like a third square box. We're not going to do that. Probably a bad idea to blow our minds on the very first program. So We also need to give it a name, so we're going to call it athletes. And now what we're going to do is we're going to initialize how much space we have for this. So this vertical list of numbers is going to be our primary list. So we know we want 100 spaces in that. And then each element in this list of 100 different lists, I suppose, is going to have 10. So I'm going to list it like this. So what we have is we've created here space for 100 lists, and in each of those lists there are going to be 10 string items. Now, what I'm going to do for the first version of this, I'll program it in two different ways. In order to keep track, and we don't need this, this is simply for clarity, we are going to make an athlete count list that's going to keep track of how many athletes are actually stored in each of these lists. So we're going to have it match. We're going to have 100 because this will be all of the different jersey numbers, okay? And what I want to do is I'm going to put in a new number. This is our jersey number that we're going to be including here. And into new name, this is going to be our athlete name. Okay, so that is going to be what we're going to read in from the user and store in our list of lists. So we are going to prompt the user for the athlete number and name here. And we're going to do this as long as they don't enter in a number that's outside of 0 to 99. So I'm going to put a while loop here while the new number is less than 100 and the new number is greater than or equal to 0. So this gives us a range that it'll make sure that it is less than 100 and greater than or equal to 0. So in here, let's prompt them. So system.out.print, enter an athlete's jersey number. And then we'll say 100 to quit. Oh, there we go. Okay, and then we're going to read in our new number. So the new number we're adding is going to be input num dot next int. Okay. Now, if it fits the range of numbers here, what we're going to do is we're going to ask them for the name. So if the new number is larger than or equal to 0 and the new number is less than 100, then we're going to do some asking. Now I realize actually this is probably a better range than what I've got down here, so I'm going to replace it. So as long as it's within the range, we're going to ask them for the name of the athlete. So system.out.print, enter the name of the athlete with number, and then we'll put new num here. Oop, new num. There we go. Okay. You know what? I think I want to just put a spacer here. I'll just scroll over so you can see this. So let's go plus there. That'll just format the output in a way that will make me happy. Okay. So we've got our name coming in here. What we're going to do is we are going to have our new name. It's going to get the value of input text dot next line. And that will be the name. Okay. Now, enter the athlete into the list. All right. So what we're going to do here is we're partially going to use to our advantage the fact that athlete count here, whenever we create an integer array, all of the values in the array are set to 0. Which is perfect because that is how many athletes we currently have in each of those lists. So we're going to use that to our advantage. So what we need to do is we still need to make sure that the amount of athletes that we have is less than 10. So if the athlete count, now which athlete count? So say we put in the number 23 for LeBron James, we would want to check to see if the spot in 23, so list 23 has less than 10 names. But of course, this is just going to be based on whatever number they entered. So it's going to be a new num here. So if that's the case, we're going to add it. Otherwise, we're going to reject it. So system.out.println, we'll say error, comma, out of space. And that'll be just fine. Okay. But now, how do we store this? So what we want to do is we want to say, first off, which list are we going to add it to? So that is going to be athletes, new num. So if I'm putting LeBron James in, I want to put him in the 23rd list that I have, or whatever the jersey numbers. So I'm going to put them into this list. Now, what position in that list am I going to put them into? If LeBron James is the first one, I'm going to put it into position 0. Just like this. Now, we're not guaranteed that it's going to be position 0. Maybe it is the second name that I'm putting in the list. So how do we keep track of which index in the list it's actually going to get stored into? So that's why I have the athlete count here. The athlete count is going to keep track of how many are in that space. So this is where, to our advantage, they are all initialized at 0. So athlete count. Now, which athlete count? Because it's a list of all of the counts of athletes. We are going to go for new num. So think about it this way. Imagine that LeBron James is the first athlete that we were putting into list 23. It checks to see, does list 23 have less than 10? If it does, if it has 0, for example, then what it's going to do is it's going to put it in our athletes list. So in list 23, it's going to add it as the 0 element name that is going to be in that list. Now, after we do this, we have just increased the amount of athletes that we have. So we do have to put our athlete count higher. So athlete count, again, list 23 or whatever, plus plus. So we can keep track of what's going on there. Okay. So now this actually stores everything correctly. Our problem after that is now system.out.println list of athletes. So how do I go about this business of listing my athletes? So we need some for loop help here. So for int I gets the value 0 while I is less than athletes dot length I plus plus. Okay. Now, what is athletes dot length going to be equal to? The athletes dot length is going to be 100. Length equals 100. Because what this will be doing is it'll be looking at our exterior list in order to determine how many spaces there are in it. So now what we need to do is we need to check each list individually to see where we can find names. We're not going to print null elements. We're just going to print the names that we come across. So in order to traverse the interior lists, I need another for loop. So not j equals 0. Now, how many elements are going to be in each of the lists that are inside this exterior list? So we're going to go while j is less than athletes I dot length and j plus plus. So, and what is the length of each of these? So every single list that we have in our entire two-dimensional array has a size of 10. So what this is going to do is it's going to go through each list individually. And then what this is going to do is it's going to go through each element in those lists to see where we have names. Okay, so how do we do this? So if athletes, now, how do we actually access one of the elements to see if it's null or if it in fact has a name? So we address them like this. So it's list I element j. So if list I element j is not null, then what it's going to do is first thing we're going to do is we'll check to see if we need an extra 0 digit here, because we're going to print the numbers first. So if I is less than 10, then system.out.print, let's get a 0 here. So this is for single digit jerseys. Then what we're going to do is we're going to system.out.println I plus colon plus athletes I j. And then we should get our result. So let's try this out. Okay. Oh, you know what? I just didn't construct them correctly. So this is going to be a new string. And this is a new integer array. Okay. And what do I have here? String cannot be converted. Did I set new name to be an integer? My goodness. All right. Oh, no. I got to get rid of this thing. Okay. So let's put in our 3 athletes to see if this works. So jersey number 4. I'm going to put in Uwe Krupp. Jersey 23, we'll put in LeBron James. And then we're going to put a second element into 23. This is where we'll put Michael Jordan. And then we'll put 100 and then see if we get them. Okay, so what happens is our exterior, I'll move this so that we can see both at the same time. Our exterior array is going down the individual lists, and whenever it finds So this one is also going through each element in the list. So it picks list 0 and then checks elements 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Then what it does is if the element that it's looking at is not null, then what it's going to do is it's going to print it in this way. Now, this isn't a terribly efficient way of going through this because it is going through 100 lists of 10 items. So this is going through 1,000 elements, and we could definitely make some improvements on this by basically determining whenever we find a null element, then it should stop looking. But this is the introductory level of this. So hopefully that shows you a little bit about how you can make a list of lists, store elements in those, and then retrieve them for printing or whatever purpose you might need them for.